Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we're bringing in Don Brown. Don, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you here. I'm excited for today. We're doing stuff that I'm not particularly familiar with, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So first, let's talk a little bit about you. So for folks who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to give us a bit of a background?
Yeah, sure. So I've been programming for 20 years or so, different places. I think we were just talking about for the military, I used to work with the U.S. Navy, doing some classified secret work. That was pretty interesting. I was at Atlassian for 12, 13 years. So I was back when they were like 40 people and left when they were about 5,000. And did a couple little things. And then now I have my own company. A couple of my old friends from Atlassian, we decided to create a new company to tackle deployment metrics.
Yeah, and so deployment metrics are something that, I think I have a kind of gut feeling around what these are, and I probably monitor some of these, but I don't know that I've ever formalized a definition in my head. So can you maybe talk us through what are deployment metrics?
Sure. So when you're looking at metrics, obviously, like any metrics, there's hundreds of them, thousands of them. You can create your own. But when I talked about deployment metrics, I guess I'm more specifically talking about the DORA metrics. Mm-hmm. So what happened is in 2016, the DevOps Research and Assessment Group sat down and said, we want to do a giant study to understand who are top performers and then why are they top performers, to kind of help the rest of us learn to get better. And in all the research, they came across 4 metrics that strongly correlated to high-performing team, and then dove into them. So what those metrics are deployment frequency, so how many times you deploy. They are change lead time, so the time how they define it was the time from first commit till it's in production. Mm-hmm. It was mean time to change failure rate, which is the ratio of how many deploys were successful and how many were not, maybe rolled back, incident, whatever. And then finally, mean time to recovery. So if you do detect that there's a problem, how quickly can you get that fix out and have the problem resolved? And they found that if you were a team that scored highly in a certain range on these metrics, you were statistically highly correlated. I'm not a mathematician or a statistician, but whatever. It means that you're probably in this elite category and you're probably a high performing team.
Cool. Yeah. So that's, this is the DORA report. I've seen these shared around there. They're also called the State of DevOps reports. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's actually kind of 2 because that one kind of came out in 2016, and then they've kind of done some more. Every year they do a new one. Mm-hmm. They'll focus on different things. I think this last one they focused on DevOps as a platform. So the idea that a SRE team shouldn't just be handling your software in production, but it also should be building tools to enable your developers to support their own software. Sure. So each time it has a different focus, but it kind of all comes from that. So there was the DORA report, and then there was a book called Accelerate, which some people may be familiar with, which was the people who did the report talking about how they came up with it. A lot of it is stat stuff, but there's a lot of good little juicy nuggets in there as far as learning how they worked and what they learned.
And this is, let me see, I'm pulling up the book as well. I'm sharing some links in the chat here. It is Nicole Forsgren. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. So Dr. Nicole Forsgren has done a ton of work in this space, just absolutely brilliant. And so this is kind of the collected findings. And so specifically, it sounds like one of the biggest things that we're looking for here is your ability to not only ship quickly, but ship confidently and with a really fast recovery time is kind of what correlates to this. And so when you set out to build Sleuth, your idea was to kind of make this into a third-party monitoring system. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, people were kind of coming up with their own ways to kind of monitor and track this stuff. Historically, and even when I joined Atlassian, they were releasing every 6 months, 3 months, because it was behind the firewall software only. And so there wasn't a lot of change. Yeah. But as you adopt cloud type things and as you adopt practices like continuous delivery and continuous deployment, all of a sudden you're changing multiple times a week some teams multiple times a day, and sometimes teams multiple times an hour.
Right.
And so the rate of change is so much higher that it's hard to know what the heck is going on, which can also lead to incidences because people don't know what's happening. So we found that there wasn't a lot of software that would kind of look at that bigger picture and keep track of what's happening, but also and the health of it, but then also give you those metrics so that you kind of at a higher level step up, like the manager or the director level, have an idea of, are we going in the right direction or are we going in the wrong direction?
Yeah, no, I think that's a super useful. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, actually, is the way we organize our tools, the way we set up our infrastructure, and how that impacts our team culture. And so, the DORA report is part of what kind of got me down this road of thinking about this in the first place. And what I like is, there's the old adage that you manage what gets measured. And when you're talking about how you make a company care about things like this, like, if what we're saying is that we want to make sure that we have a high performing team, not by saying we only hire the best or by, refusing to hire anybody who's like less than 15 years experience in the industry or whatever these other metrics are.
Rockstar's only 15 years of experience. Yes.
None of that, please. So instead, what we're saying is, if managers don't know how to measure this stuff, they look for other things to measure. They focus on metrics that they can control. And so if healthy teams is a metric that you want, we previously didn't really have a way to do that, right? We would just say, I don't know, a healthy team is a team that commits a lot, or a healthy team is a team that has a lot of PRs or whatever.
Yes.
And so what I like about this is that you've provided numbers that correlate to this research that very clearly states this is how we do it. We are going to give you a number that shows whether or not your team is statistically correlated with high performance. And
exactly. That's what managers want to do. Their job is to take a team and make it better. And so they need something. So either they're going to make up something in their head, such as, oh, that team has cool people I drink with, and so therefore I like them more. Or they're going to come up with some BS measurement like lines of code or number of commits or number of PRs. But, as you know, when you focus on that, it creates the whole wrong kind of culture and the wrong kind of behaviors.
Yeah.
And so what they did with the DORA is, okay, let's stay back and let's say if you were going to look at some measures. But I just want to caveat all of this by saying I'm not a fan of starting with the numbers and putting goals against those numbers. I think that's a bad idea. Sure. Because anytime I think there's a phrase somewhere that says, at the moment a measure becomes a goal, it ceases to become a useful measure.
Yes.
Because what happens is people start saying, oh, deployment frequency, great. I'm going to commit one line of code per change, and I'm going to get that number way up. But you didn't do anything, and now actually a change is more complicated because it's spread across multiple deploys. So you really have to understand the role in it. But yeah, if you understand the role is kind of an after the fact, let you know generally how things are going, but it's one input among many, then I think these are metrics are your best bet.
Yeah. No, and I like, that's a really good point that, when you create a metric, people are going to try to figure out how to game that metric. And one of the thing that I have tried to do is as I've moved into the different rungs of management has been thinking about metrics as a mesh or you got to make sure that they're all working in concert. You can't pick one number because everybody's going to push that one number. But if you say, okay, well, we want to drive, I don't know, adoption of this thing, we're not saying, well, okay, well, let's make a contest where everybody has to deploy one function. It's like, okay, well, let's drive awareness through something like that. But the other metric that we're monitoring is whether or not they, stay active for a period of time, whether or not that activity leads to deeper integration with the platform, like metrics that actually show whether or not progress was made instead of just, hey, we made a hypey kind of viral sharing thing that got us a huge spike of traffic and no one ever thought about us again afterward. So it helps. And this feels like it's kind of the same thing. We could very easily game, I'm going to commit one line of code at a time. It's a little harder to game how quickly can we get deployed to production. It's a little harder to game how quickly can we recover from an error. And all of those things, in one of my favorite words, gestalt, is in combination, when we take the sum total of that, we get a clear picture of something that's a little more difficult to game as a system.
Exactly. And I think that's where they were really clever in picking the 4 metrics because, the thing that we heard, circa 2005, 2008 or something, Facebook, move fast and break things. So it's really just focusing on speed, which at the time, as I said, when I joined Atlassian in 2006, they were deploying once every 3 to 6 months. So yeah, there was a lot of value in improving the speed. But in the DORA metrics, one of the other ones is change failure rate. So how many times those changes fail? So if you just optimize one number, you're probably going to screw the other numbers. So you kind of have to keep them, they kind of balance each other.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And so, kind of looking at this, the way that that Sleuth is handling this is, well, I guess, is it easier to talk about this or is it easier to show this? Like, how did you approach solving this problem?
What we found is, even at Atlassian, is teams, as you got larger, you could afford people to come in and be on a platform team to build these kind of monitoring and tracking systems for yourself. And at Atlassian, we had the same thing. In fact, I think just they're starting to release some of their platform stuff. It's kind of like AWS. Actually, just to back up a little bit, AWS was created because Amazon wanted to be able to have the best website to do things. And so, but in order to do that, they created this big platform called AWS and eventually said, well, why don't we just release that and make that a product?
Yeah.
And so I think similarly, some of these large companies are doing it. Atlassian's doing with Compass, for example, taking some of the platform. So it was from those learnings where you build it for your team that's just for your one company. And then you say, well, everyone's building this themselves. Why would we want that? Why not give up something that somebody could purchase? Because if instead of spinning up 2-3 devs at 100, 200K a year, depending on the location, instead you spend some money, but you get this thing for free, or not for free. Although there is a free plan, but there's actually some open source ones about this as well. But the idea is find a way to measure this stuff without having to go and have the long discussions of which metrics should we measure, how should we do it. By using an off the shelf system, you kind of simplify a lot of that.
Yeah, when the build versus buy conversation too is it can be easy to optimize in one. Oh, we could build this in house and save $60 a month or whatever, $100 a month, whatever the plan is. But like, how much do you pay your devs every hour? And how many hours are they going to spend not only building this, but then continuing to maintain it throughout the lifetime of the product? And
yes,
that's like, it's so much more expensive than $99 a month. I feel like people, we talk about initial costs. Oh, I could set this up in a weekend. You could set it up in a weekend and maintain it for a lifetime.
Yep.
I've
my God, that is one of my favorite things when I get someone right out of college. It's just that enthusiasm. Like, I could just rebuild this. It's not a big deal. And you're like, right. And they just don't understand that 80 to 90% of costs, and I think there's even studies on this, is maintaining the software. Yes. Writing it is actually the easy part. That's the part that doesn't take a lot. So yeah, if you've ever been at a large company and you're like, I'm just going to build this tool, which is going to make my life better. And it is, and you get some accolades and you're like, this is awesome. I'm kicking ass. And then a year, 2 years, 3 years, you realize I'm the one having to maintain this. Right. I'm not saying you regret doing it in the first place, but you start to understand the true cost of what you did.
Yeah, it's that kind of hard-won wisdom, right? Like all of us who thought we were hotshots when we were early in our career built that one system that then became the only thing we did because it was so hard to maintain that it was like, oh yeah, no, go to Jason for that because he's the one who built that nightmare and nobody else knows how it works. So, page him. Oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, actually, it was pretty bad at Atlassian when I started in 2006. So, as I said, behind the firewall software only, I was hired to bring it to the cloud. And how we did billing was when you went to our forum and you typed in a credit card, it sent an email to an address that a group of 20 people, eventually it grew to, I think, 30 people, would go through those emails and manually copy and paste a credit card number to run the credit card and then email you the license. It took a day or two or whatever. Well, in cloud software that's monthly, that clearly isn't going to work. And so before we could even start our project, I had to build what I called HAMS, which was a hosted account management system. And I had a cool logo of I found it's like some beer that was like a peg drinking beer. So I was like, perfect. That's the new name of my project. And so I built this as this billing system to automate a billing. And I think up until maybe last year, it was still in effect. Now, I'm sure it's been rewritten a few times or whatever, but it was just kind of this thing where it was just to get me through my one problem so I could move on.
Right.
but it was such a critical thing that they had a whole team and rewrites and all kinds of stuff around it. So
Yeah,
it's good. I'm not saying I do regret doing it, but holy crap, if I was the only person on call for that, that would have been my life.
yeah, it's the total cost of doing business, and like it's that also, it's what I think gives when people talk about rockstar programmers, part of the backlash against a rockstar programmer is that they don't stick around to maintain this stuff. They come in, they invent things, they get bored, and then they leave in 18 months or 2 years to go to another company and rebuild a bunch of new stuff because it's exciting. And we all get to deal with that legacy code of like, yeah, somebody came in, they built this thing, we mostly know how it works. We don't know why we didn't buy an off-the-shelf solution, and now we staff 6 full-time engineers to keep that thing running. And it's like, ooh, it would have been cheaper to pay somebody else for this.
Yeah, but and it reinforces that whole idea of the rockstar programmer, because he or she looks back and says, oh, it took you 6 people to replace me. Like clearly, and so it kind of creates this myth of this hero person that comes in, does something, walks away, and the people that are just no good are the ones that have to clean up the mess. But that's of course not how it is. But it's unfortunate.
Yeah, there's, it does, as you said, it kind of points out one of the tricky parts of this industry is that the shiny parts aren't really the valuable work a lot of the time. Like the valuable work is keeping the lights on. And the shiny part is like, I can build a proof of concept that only mostly works very quickly and it'll look very impressive. Making that last 15% work though, that's why people pay for services. That's why my homegrown WebSocket server is fine for me and absolutely unacceptable for a real business, is because I don't deal with the edge cases. I just apologize when all my shit breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I, you can't apologize when you're Amazon. You got to have those people who spend all the time working through that last 15% of horrible edge cases that, only one client needs them. But if you don't have them for that one client, they lose out on millions of dollars of revenue. And, it's not an acceptable trade-off to make. For me, if my stuff breaks, I have to get embarrassed and blush on camera, and, there's no trade-off for that. But nobody's given high fives to that engineer who inherited the 85% project and like took it to 100%. But geez, that's hard work.
Yeah. What do we always say, that the last 20% is 80% of the time?
Yeah. I mean, it really does, that this is why I never finish anything. I get something to the part where I have to start doing the polish work. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens when you get this far in a project. It'd be fun. What if I just started over? I'm kidding. I have a new hobby now.
Yeah. I got a better one.
Yeah. Yep. This one won't have any problems. This is going to be the one project that ever existed that doesn't have that last 20% of work.
But I guess I also want to just give a little shout out to those folks who were that person that does that first 20% and thinks they're done. Because the chat was also saying there's a couple of people that have been them, and I think we all have been there. And but I think they provide a service. As much as it's easy to look at them and say, oh, you're creating all these messes, you're ruining things. But they're not, in the sense of they're injecting new ideas into it. And that's why I love working with brand new programmers, is because they don't have the preconceptions like, oh, this one thing is too hard or whatever. They'll just sit down and say, oh, I'm excited about that, so I'm doing it. It's kind of like when you were starting programming, you wrote your first game. You just have this energy about you. And even though, yes, there are definitely disadvantages we talked about, you're creating something that wasn't there in the first place.
Right.
That all the rest of us old people would look around and say, oh yeah, I would never do that. That's way too much work. But you, with your maybe naivety or whatever, just jump in and do it. And many times it turns out that potentially could turn around a company. There's many examples of Gmail and different ones that were started as little side projects. Whereas if everyone was responsible, none of us would have started it, because all of us would look at it and say, oh God, no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. I had a conversation about this. I found out that this actually tracks back to Simon Wardley has talked about this, and it's the concept of like different working personas. Right. And I think that in the beginning, a lot of us just have boundless energy and enthusiasm and optimism. We just assume that all problems, the reason that problem's never been solved is because I haven't been involved, right? Like,
I love it though. But such a great feeling.
As you get further and further in your career, I think we start to drift somewhere on the spectrum. And on the far left of the spectrum is this idea of like being an inventor, or what Simon Wardley would call a pioneer. You are the one who likes to wander out into greenfield and unknown stuff and see what you can put together, right? And this is typically what I think where you would put like somebody who's classically called a rockstar developer, you'd put them in that bucket because they are the ones who are going to just dive in and make a big mess and try things out. In the middle of that spectrum is somebody that you would call like a more of a settler. Like they show up where the pioneers have been, and they take the things and they take them from being these wild ideas that kind of work to being things that work. They actually do that work of polishing and organizing and putting in the infrastructure so that this thing actually functions. And then on the far end of the spectrum are urban planners, people who like to take existing systems and incrementally improve them and like really just make them perfect and enterprise ready. And I've met people who fall in all three camps and on different blends of those camps throughout my career. And I really, really like thinking about it that way because it also helps me when I'm thinking about hiring. Like, if you're hiring an SRE, in a lot of cases, you're looking for somebody who falls into that like urban planner mindset, somebody who really gets jazzed up about like, ooh, you got a big messy pile of legacy code. I'm going to make it run so smooth. You put somebody like me who falls more in the like pioneer, creator camp, I'm going to come in and make a giant mess as an SRE. I would be a terrible SRE because I'd look at it and go, that sounds frustrating. I'm going to build it over again. You know what I mean? Right. Like I would cost every company so much money if they put me in as an SRE. And so thinking about hiring and how to line people up. Anyways, we got way off topic. We're way in the weeds here, aren't we?
Well, that's okay. I got a way to bring it back
Okay.
because I'm gonna go a little bit more in the weeds, and then I'm gonna circle around.
Please do. I love
this
these
back
adventures.
road that goes back to the main road that I'm gonna hit. So one more cornfield.
Yes.
But one of my pet peeves is individual performance rating. If you're a manager, you know this, how annoying it is to try to rate your employees for their month or their quarterly or yearly or whatever bonuses and things. My least favorite, though, is when I'm in a company where they say, okay, we're going to rate them by numbers, which is already problematic. And then you could only give one person in your team the top number, and then two people the next number, and then the rest get the rest number. I don't know if you've ever worked in a place that did that.
I have not, no.
And I was the worst because all the things you're talking about, how there's different people in different roles and they can excel in that. How do you compare them such that you can only say, well, this one person is the most valuable because the rock star is doing something totally different than the urban planner? And how do you compare that? And it just puts you in a possible position, and I find it very demoralizing. So going back to that back road of deployment metrics or team metrics, that's what I liked about the DORA is it's looking at I'm bringing it. It's looking at the measuring performance, but for a team, not for an individual.
I love that.
Whereas these other measures per commit, the rockstar, the pioneer is going to win that one because they're just like churning shit out nonstop.
Yeah.
Whereas the urban planner is like, oh, I got this hard bug that's going to take me 5 days to debug and to figure out how to reproduce and whatever. They're always going to lose at that number. But if you step back and you say, as a team, this team is deploying this often, it's failing this often, they're able to recover this quickly. Now you can start to actually compare between different teams and use that as a way to get better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also like it too, because it shows, you'll also start to see like, you can find individual performance indicators. Cause I think that, there's the teams succeed or fail as a unit. Like that it really is like, somebody said the phrase teams are immutable. And I thought about that a lot because each team that you bring together is a unique combination of people with unique strengths and weaknesses. And when you get the right combination of people together, it's magic. The team that I have at Netlify is unbelievable. Sarah Drasner put this team together and it's just absolutely incredible. If we lose or gain somebody, we do become a different team every single time. But that all so we measure as a unit, like how much of an impact are we as a team having. And then we also want to look for individual growth and things like that. So what I like about these metrics is that they let us get the broad view, and then we can reward the team for being a great team, and then use the individual metrics to find coaching opportunities. How can you get even better? How do you get to that next level? How do we get you that next promotion? I like that. And so it's not, instead of stack ranking your employees, you're looking at your teams as a level of health, and then you can find opportunities for employees to improve within that overall measure of health.
For sure, because we're all a team going toward that goal. So you're going to look at, say, like change lead time, how long it took from first commit to deployment. And then you're going to start breaking that down into buckets into this is coding time, this is review time, this is deployment time. And then you'll say, okay, what's the long pole in the tent? Oh, our deployment takes 3 hours. Oh, let's see if we can fix that. And then that's where you do get individuals involved and they can step up as you're kind of tightening those processes. But, it's starting out, what do we want to accomplish as a team? And then how can we make that happen?
Yeah, I love it. Okay. All right. So I feel like I'm very sold on this as a general metric. I want this metric for my teams. So let's learn how to actually do it. So what I'm going to do is flip us over to pair programming view. And I'm going to start by giving a shout out to Jordan from White Coat Caption, who is giving us live captions today. So thank you very much, Jordan, for being here with us. You can go see those on the homepage of learnwithjason.dev. That is made possible by our sponsors. We've got Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, and Hasura all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people. Means a lot to me. I'm very excited to have that support. Also, if you want to see more from Don is on Twitch. You can go, let me see if my shout out command is going to work today. Let's try it. Hey, look at it go. Okay, so this is so go follow Don on Twitch and get lots and lots of excellent content just like this, regular streaming here. So, lots and lots of good things to see there. We're going to be talking today.
Develop my product on stream usually.
That's really cool. So that's real world stuff, which is even more than what we typically do on this show, which is more proof of concept-y. So yeah. And today we're going to be working with Sleuth. So sleuth.io is the product that we've been talking about, gives you the metrics around deployment. And this is that DORA report that we were talking about. So you can go and find all of the reports down here. This is the one that you were talking about, the 2016.
Yeah, that was the original one. Yep.
Yeah. So I will drop another link here. This will also be in the show notes.
16, 17. I think it's 16.
One of them. But anyways, these are all really good. This 2019 is also, I think it was this one is really excellent as well. So get those, get into those, check them out. Really, really good insights there. And then this is the book, Accelerate, if you want to read the book version of what Dr. Forsgren put together. So, okay, I'm ready. I am ready to actually see this in action. I want to give it a try. So what should my first step be if we want to set up a site?
So do you have an application that you want to use, or do you want to create a new application and then have Sleuth track its metrics?
Let's create a new application so that we don't have to deal with all, we talked about how many mistakes I make in the first 20% of my projects. Let's not have to suffer through those today.
And continuing the pattern of just creating a new project whenever you get stuck. Yes,
exactly.
Let's do that.
Exactly.
We're enablers today.
Let's do something that's relatively straightforward to deploy. So let's grab an 11D template. 11D is a static site generator. We've got some episodes in the archive about it if you want to see. And what we should be able to do is get a template. So let's see. I think there's some templates that we can just quick start on. Starter projects, there we go. Let's grab 11D Netlify Jumpstart, perfect score. There we go. Let's do it. And where is the generator repo from this template? That's what I want. And we're going to put this in Learn with Jason. And we will call this Sleuth 11D project. Make it public. Here we go. All right. So if you want to go check out that project, I just dropped it in the chat. And so we've got that project. And then what I'm going to do is just head over to Netlify and we'll deploy this thing. So a new site from Git, go to GitHub. Do I want to set anything up with Sleuth before I deploy this?
No, let's just get something out there and then we'll because I think that's how most people would do it, is they would have something existing that they want to go then track.
Yeah, let's do that. So search for Sleuth. There it is. Okay, we're going to put it in my line. Going to assume that we need that for some reason. I don't know what that's for. Trick puppeteer. Okay, let's deploy it.
Now you have to remind me, have you actually used Netlify for a project before? But do you also do you integrate with like Datadog and different metric tracking things like monitoring tools and stuff?
So Datadog is available on enterprise plans. You can add integrations for Sentry or Rollbar or things like that manually. But yeah, Datadog, we have Logdrain set up on enterprise plans.
Okay. Have you ever used Sentry or Rollbar or any of that kind of integrated into a product?
I've used Sentry. We did an episode a little while back, and it was so pleasant, like just so nice to set up.
Of course you did, because Raul was the one who recommended me to talk to you. So,
yeah,
right. I'm remembering now. Raul is a marketing guy at Sentry who used to work at Atlassian with me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we are now set. We got a site. I'll rename this, but okay, so here's our site. Let me rename it to something that I'm actually going to remember. So we'll go to the site settings and let's rename this thing. And we're going to call it Sleuth 11D project so that I can match that to the other name. And then I can open that up. Let's get that out of here. There we go. All right, so here's the real site that we're going to use and manage. So I'm now ready. I think we've got a project and we can go in and make some edits to this and check our deploy velocity.
Okay, cool. So if we want to, let's go through probably the Sleuth startup process, and then we'll kind of see what we want to sprinkle in after that.
Okay, so do I want to try now for free?
Yeah, try now for free.
Let's do it. I'm going to sign up with my GitHub account. Oh, okay, let's call it Learn with Jason. Okay, it's got Learn with Jason. Probably need that one. Oh, good.
Wow.
Oh, God.
A lot of orgs.
Everybody just give me 1 second here. I know, I'm in everything.
Makes sense, I suppose.
And we authorize. Okay. GitHub. Let's call this Sleuth 11D project so that I don't lose it. Allow members of your team. Sure. Repository. Let's get, I think if I just search Sleuth, it should show up. There.
You have a lot of repos. I guess that would make sense as well.
Yeah, I think at this point I'm close to 500 repos.
Jeez.
So let's see. Do I want to do any of these things?
No, that's okay. So that's, for example, if you're a team that has a deployment branch per environment. So for example, staging goes to the staging branch, production goes to production, stuff like that. I think we'll just keep them all on main.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it. And then we'll keep that the same. Let's look at these and then you can tell me if I need any of them.
Yeah. So we're going to use precise. So actually, let me take a step back. So there's a number of tools in this space that are also trying to give you metrics. What they usually do is just look at the get data. Sleuth is a little bit different because we want you to tell us about when a deploy happens. So we look at deploys. We also look at get data, but mainly it's about deploys. So the first thing is about how you tell Sleuth about a deploy. And we're going to use the precise method, meaning that you're going to send us a webhook to tell us you deployed something.
Gotcha.
That way our metrics are precise because, for example, change lead time will be exactly when it was deployed, not when we think it might have, or the PR was merged or something like that. The source path prefix, that's if we wanted to do a mono repo, which some companies do. In this case, probably not. The automatically locked deployments is kind of an interesting one. So the idea here, this is kind of a side feature. It's something we really liked and I built a number of times at Atlassian. So it's my product, so I threw it in here, even though it's not really metrics related.
Sure.
But basically, if you're a team that does single file deployments, meaning when it's merged to master, you deploy as well. What we often did is we try to tell other devs, hey, I merged my thing to master. I'm going to deploy it now. Please don't merge to master. So we kind of consider that locking the deployment. So when I built Sleuth, I put that into Sleuth. So when code gets merged into master, it will lock deployments. And what that means is, you know how in pull requests you have a little health thing down there of how CI ran or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Sleuth adds its own check, and that check goes red when master is locked. And so now no one else can merge through PRs. And then once it goes all the way to production, then it gets unlocked, and then the check goes green, and now people can merge again. So It's really useful for a distributed team where you're not really sure who's going to be deploying when, but you want single file. Then that can be a really great option. Other teams don't work that way. They do batch deployments. It doesn't help. So it depends on kind of your team.
Got it. No, that totally makes sense. Welcome, Ben and viewers. Hope you are having fun on your stream today. I also saw earlier, Raisin, thank you for the sub. That's very much appreciated. Okay, so this is all good. Slack notifications, that's great. Collect impact. What does this mean?
So Sleuth, it doesn't just track when a deployment happens, it tracks how healthy that deployment is. For example, Sentry, you can connect it up to Sentry, and it'll pull Sentry every 2 minutes to see how many number of errors. And if those jump, then it'll mark the deployment as unhealthy, and which is what you need for mean time to recovery and change failure rate and all those.
Very, very cool. Okay. Include in project display. Seems right. Okay. Yep. I'm ready. I'm saving and continuing.
Saving and continue.
I'm gonna skip for now. I've done that before. For this, we'd probably use Sentry. Let's see. I don't have it set up, so let's skip for now. We can add that later if we have time.
Can add it later.
So get a webhook.
So now it's telling you the next step is to add that webhook in your deployment process to tell Sleuth when a deployment happens.
Okay.
So if you click on that get webhook, it should give you some instructions.
Nice. Okay. And so the way that we're going to want to do this is I can copy this.
You can probably copy the second one because that's the full curl statement. If you wanted to do a curl, use curl, then use that one. And good thing it's a demo project, given the key is there.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And you can add extra stuff here. Nice.
Yeah, so the only thing, if you look at that curl statement, the only thing that you're going to want to replace is the your SHA. So you're going to do like a get rev parse short head type thing.
Okay.
Get your current SHA if it's in a CI system.
So let's do this. Let's GitHub repo clone, and we'll get learn with Jason Sleuth 11D project. And then in here, we can open this up. And we're going to have a package JSON with a set of commands, scripts. So when we build, we can do like a post build that'll run. Let's see. Yeah, we can get it to run a command, or we could use like a Netlify build plugin or any number of things. But so ultimately, though, what we want to do is like post build. We want to run this script.
Assuming that a post build that only gets executed when you're done deploying, because you don't want your devs when they're running it locally to be triggering a bunch of deployments or something.
Fair. That's a good point.
So maybe, I don't know, I'm not a node person, but I know that you can have like other node commands. So maybe you have a node deploy, and that actually does something.
Yeah, so I guess what we can do is let's run. How could we do this? Let's do it with a script. So we'll create something bin, and then we'll call it postdeploy.js, and then let's see. Who remembers how to do node scripts with a hash bang? Let's see, node bin and
Google to the rescue.
I know, I have to.
Yeah, when I joined HipChat, I was getting back into Python, having not really ever used it in production. I was Googling stuff like, how do I do an if statement Python? Just like the most basic things possible, but it's just faster that way.
User bin env node, that's what we want. User bin env node. And now what we should be able to do is we can run scripts in here. Is it okay if we just like make some commands to make this thing work to start?
Yeah.
What are you hemming? Oh, everybody in the chat was already telling us what to do while I was Googling that. Thank you, Chad. Sorry, I didn't pay attention yet again.
Blame it on the lag.
So what we can do is I can set up like an API key, and we'll make that into this API key here, which should be in our end, but because it's a demo project, we're not going to do that today. Then the SHA, we're going to have to figure out. But that comes out of, oh, you know what? That's going to come out of Netlify. So we just need the commit hash. Is that right? Just some kind of.
Yeah. So if this is a node script, right? So if you have some way to shell out and just run get rev parse, assuming that this command is going to be ran in the repo at the version that it's being deployed, then that's the simplest.
Okay. So I can get, to do that, I can get Exica, and we'll have to.
Also, some build systems will have the SHA as an environment variable.
So that's actually what I was thinking. Is I'm pretty sure Netlify is going to give this, right?
It's a pretty standard thing.
So what we'll get in the build environment is the read-only variables, build ID, get metadata, and here is the commit ref. That's the one.
No, yeah, probably the commit ref would be my guess.
Okay, so what I'll be able to pull out of here then is, so we'll get SHA, and that will be process.env.commitRef, and then I'm going to need fetch is going to be node fetch, which I'm going to have to install. And that will give us the ability to send off this post. So then what we can do is if process.env, we'll just make sure that what we're doing is actually a deployment, because Netlify will tell us. And we can set if Netlify is true. Or
does Netlify have an understanding of different environments?
It does. It has a context.
Okay, yeah. So, for example, if you matched your context one-to-one to Sleuth environments, then you could pass that context directly into Sleuth and tell Sleuth this is a staging deploy, this is a production deploy, this is a QA deploy, whatever.
Nice. So to start, maybe just for the case of if it's not Netlify, we will just console log not a Netlify build doing nothing. So that way we can see that it's actually working.
That works.
If we get here, what we'll be able to do is we can fetch this URL, and then we'll send in some variables. So we're going to send in the API key. That's basic auth. Is that right?
Yes, basic auth with that header. Is it basic auth?
That's just body data, right? So we would be doing.
Yeah, actually, you can, I think it's just in the body.
Okay,
I think you can also put it as a basic auth header if you wanted to, but I don't think it's documented on that page.
And so that would just be API key equals API key, and SHA equals SHA. That should work, I think. Right? So that's
the Netlify plugin idea. That's a good one.
This would be actually a great Netlify plugin that we can build that'll just do this for us. But yeah, so let's try this. So I'm gonna chmod x the bin post deploy so that we can actually execute it, and then I'm gonna start by just running it. So let's bin.
You're probably going to get an 400. It's already seen that revision, but that's fine. That shows it authenticates and everything.
Permission denied. How dare you? Bin post deploy. Why aren't you? Oh, I need to list the bin. What am I doing? Is it L? What's the one that shows you
-L? Ls
dash? Oh,
ls dash L?
Here, trying to remember my commands and completely forgetting it.
You're a Windows guy, aren't you?
I'm not. plus capital X plus lowercase x. Bin
Lowercase.
Post deploy.
Like an A plus X, or if you wanted to do whatever.
Now we've got it. So now I can go bin post deploy, and it should say not a netlify build doing nothing. Okay, perfect. So we can now run this script. And so what I'm going to do in here is just post build. We will tack it on.
Yeah, that works. So every time a dev runs it, it'll just exit out.
Right. So then if I run my build, run build.
Do you have netlify running on pull requests?
Yes.
Because that would break this as well. Well, in the sense that this wouldn't work for it because you don't want it to register or deploy when it's just testing a PR.
What was that? That was cool. It like generated all of our local images. Okay, but we get to the end, it says not a netlify build doing nothing. So you want this to only run on production?
Well, I'm generally speaking, I found that like people will have pull requests and then you'll want to run your build on the pull requests to make sure the pull requests are okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that would, if netlify is running that, then it would be registered as a deploy for production, which is probably not correct.
Okay, so we'll just set it to production, and that way it'll only run on production builds, not on pull requests. And perfect. That should put us in pretty good shape here. So let's add everything. Okay, let's get commit, and we will. Do I need to do anything before I run this to make it show up on Sleuth?
No.
Okay, let's do it.
I don't think so. As I said, it's probably going to return a 400 because it'll say they have already seen that revision.
Well, this is going to create a new build.
So when I create a new deploy because you already have one. Because if you go into Sleuth, you'll see that it sucked in your history and it figured your last version might be your first. Actually, it might not have any.
So when I push this one, Netlify is going to build again. So it'll create a new deploy correct. For this commit.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get that. We'll push, and then we can head over and watch the magic happen. So let's get to deploys. Here it goes. And what we should see, I didn't print anything at the end, so we shouldn't see anything here after it runs the post, but we will see it show up hopefully either we'll see an error if I did it wrong, or we'll see information in Sleuth.
That's a true pioneer in action. No logging, no.
0 tests, 0 safeguards, ship it.
It works on my machine. Good times.
Let's see how far we get here. So this should happen pretty fast. There we go. Does the social images. And off it goes. All right, let's see if anything happened here. So we're going to close. And then we're going to look at what am I looking for next? Project dashboard.
Yeah, maybe.
Here's my next deploy.
So it detected that there was a change. Maybe do print out errors in case we passed in the author. Oh, no, yeah. So there's your deploy. Or are you looking at the future deploy?
I think.
Yeah. So what happens is when we detect a commit to master, mm-hmm. we'll create a future deploy, meaning it's not actually deployed yet, but if you want to see what's coming when you do deploy it, that's what it is. So that's what we're kind of looking at here. It looks like it didn't get registered as a deploy from our script though. So we might need to add some printing out what happened.
Okay. Let's do that. So we'll go into our script, and then what we're going to get back is a response. Do you know if the response is text, JSON?
Off the top of my head, I want to say text. You just print out, whatever the equivalent is, but just a body of the response.
Okay, so let's send back res text and see what we get. I guess we could just console log res body and see what happens.
Yeah, and then maybe also if you could throw the status code.
Oh, that's gonna be. Yeah. Okay, so let's console log. We can do the res status.
That's a fancy little font you got there.
Operator mono. Then we can do like a res okay, and maybe what we can do. That seems like it's probably. Let's just try setting it.
I did a channel point redemption thing where people can suggest a font, and I'll switch my IDE to it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, man. That is crazy. The fonts that people find, it's nuts.
Console.log, and then we'll just pass in the response. Okay, so let's log both of those and see what happens. And this builds fast enough that I think I'm just gonna ship it.
We'll do it live.
Well, because my other option is to try to run the Netlify build locally without
set all the environment variables.
Yeah, changing all the which I could do. It would be reasonably fast, and we've got like a local CLI for doing that stuff that would be good. But since this is so fast, let's just let it rip and see what happens.
Yeah, that's the advantage of a new project, the minute or less builds.
Yeah, well, it's also just kind of a nice thing when you use something like 11D. It's just such a lightweight little builder. Status 401.
Okay, so that's a authentication problem. So the API key, however that's being sent over, wasn't being recognized.
So I'm probably doing something wrong.
You can also send it in JSON if that's easier.
That would be stringify, and we can just send it in as like API key like this.
Yeah, I mean, you can just send it as an application JSON content type and with the JSON body, and that works too.
Okay, so let's do that. It is posting, so that's not the problem.
Actually, so I've had this kind of like trying to figure out the right command for people, because sometimes people can copy paste curl, but other times they do like what you do and want to turn it into their own command. And so I created a little Python standalone binary client as an option for people to use that. Because sometimes, is it a post? Is it the right content type? Did I escape my string correctly? Little things like that can trip you up.
Yeah. And so we do want to post. So let's see.
With that fetch library, can you debug what's going over the wire? Like it dumps what's going over the wire?
Yeah.
That might be an option, just to see if things are being coded and escaped as you expect.
Close that so I can see what's going on. Log responses.
And it should be a post first again. So I think we got that right.
So what came out at the end here? We got back 200, success. Okay, that looks better. So let's go try this thing out. We're gonna get back here. We've got a healthy project. Hey, look at it go. Latest deploy. It is a code deploy. Change lead time 5 minutes. Nice. This is cool.
So if you can kind of hover over those, you can see what it was. So it looks like we did our commit 6 minutes ago, or from the last time that we had a deployment. Sorry, last time deployment, the first commit related to that was 6 minutes ago. And then we had several commits trying to get it working, and then we finally had it successfully deploy at the end there.
Nice. Yeah. And so if we'd been logging an error or something, it would have shown like an unhealthy deploy because there would have been issues, right?
Yeah. So that can go multiple different ways. If you go to like the integrations tab, you can see that you can connect it up to Sentry, you can connect it up to Datadog, CloudWatch, anywhere where you have a source of impact. You can connect it to those type of things. There's also a API, so that if you want to manually tell it that it's healthy or not, you can. You can change it in the UI, and you can change it in Slack, and you can change it by GraphQL. So basically lots of different ways. And the reason why I mention all those different ways is because if the end goal is you want to get good metrics, you want to get your good change failure rate, and you want to get mean time to recover correct, then you do really care about whether the program is tracking healthy or unhealthy correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really nice though. Like being able to see how quickly that works and getting it all plugged in. And so now we're seeing like, here's our failure rate. So if we wanted to hook this up with like unhealthy, I would need to set up Sentry, right?
Or you can just manually set it if you wanted to just try it out.
Okay.
So like if you go to the deployment, you can just say force change this one to be unhealthy.
Okay. So I go into here and I look at one of my deploys and I can
there's a little caret right by the heart up there. To the left.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So we mark it as unhealthy. Maybe. Hello?
Did it jump on you?
It's like the click isn't doing anything.
Oh, refresh it maybe.
Unhealthy. Yeah, okay, there it goes. So now we have project dashboard and it says deploy verification. It says it's red. Okay, so then let's make some kind of a fix. So we'll go in here and we'll change something. Let's make a page. How about one of Sure, this seems okay.
Holy buckets. What's the holy buckets for?
Holy buckets. That is, well, I don't know why I started saying that, but at some point I think I wanted to swear and I said holy buckets. And then it's, then I just ran with it.
I like it though. I mean, the buckets has that percussive consonance, which is similar. So
yeah, just full chaos. Okay, so let's make a change.
That's the best thing about streaming live. I remember when I used to do conference speaking, I did a couple where I coded live. It was always so much more fun, but it took so much more time to prepare.
Mm-hmm. The live coding at conferences it's high pressure. Streaming, it's like, hey, let's just break things and see if we can recover from them and see how fast it happens.
Yeah, and then it's like, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll do it again. Whereas the conference, this is your one shot. There is no redos.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we've got, we marked one unhealthy, and here's our failure rate. So here's a bad one, right? I like it. And then we're going to go back here. Look, I think this deploy is probably already done. Almost. Ready to start. Are you...
Go, baby, go, baby, go.
Did you hang on me?
Yeah, I've had a live coding where the computer crashed. That was fun.
Let's just rebuild that. Start it again.
Basically, I stand up and start pantomiming. Okay, here's what would have happened. I created this thing here, and then I moved it over here.
Yeah. Zach Leatherman, I think, has used a thing. I know, like... Yanni, let's see if I can not murder his last name. Yanni Evacalio, I think. He did a thing he called Hacker Typer that would allow you to like mash on your keyboard, and that would make it look like you were typing really fast, which is really funny. Yeah, pre-recording and showing the video of live coding is also a really good idea. I think a lot of people who are making courses now do that, where they code the project and then they like narrate over them coding, which also takes a lot of the pressure off, because all you have to do now is talk. You don't have to remember like how to get the code to work.
Yeah, so and I guess I'm mixed on that. On one hand, it definitely, from an audience member, it means that you get a more consistent experience. But on the other hand, if you've ever been at a talk with someone who's just entertaining and they're live coding, it is just the pinnacle. I think it's just so much fun because then they can pause and go off on a tangent and then come back over or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a very hard thing to do. I've also done it with macros, where I'll just have different macros that'll kind of autofill some things, and that helped a little bit. It was training wheels. I say training wheels to the live coding.
Let's see. So this is live, and so now I have my code deployments. Make the deploy healthy again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
And then when I go and look at my health, one of two unhealthy. So this part, how do I get it to go back up? because we did deploy
That's the change failure. Yeah. Why? I think it's because for that day you had one unhealthy, so it's kind of bucketing it by
Oh,
day
I understand.
by day.
Okay. One of two unhealthy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. So then on like future days, I see. And so this is kind of the average. So it starts green and then it trends on down, right? And then it'll trend back up. Okay.
Yeah. So
that
the
makes
next
sense.
day, if you have all green, then that's kind of doing at the high level. We actually have this thing, which I'm so tempted to turn on for you. We're about to beta, which kind of redoes the whole metric view to make it more front and center and give you more trends over time and give you suggestions and all kinds of stuff.
That's nice. And so this is slick. This is really nice. And so obviously we can't do a lot of the over time stuff, but I think I remember you saying you have a live demo for sleuth.io itself. Is that right?
Yeah. If you went to app.sleuth.io/sleuth/sleuth.
Oh, it bounced me to my own thing.
Or click on live demo. That is probably faster.
/sleuth. Do I have to log out to see it? Let's open it up.
Just go to /sleuth, and that should trigger it to go back over. Or that works too. /sleuth.
Oh, it bounced it. Okay, so let's try it out in
Did that 10 times fast.
.io/sleuth. Here. So if you're auth, it takes you to your own stuff, which does make sense.
That kind of makes sense. Yeah, we kind of put in this hack that says if it's sleuth, then we try to show it more public, but otherwise, of course, you don't show anyone else's stuff. But yeah, so this is us developing Sleuth. You can see that we're working kind of on this dashboard thing. Actually, we just changed our billing. And then we track three things. Sleuth will track code, but we also track our Terraform changes.
Oh, nice.
Because we want our metrics to cover not just code changes, but also feature flags. So for example, if we enable something and it creates some errors, then we want that to show up in our stats too. So it's all sources of change. We have one company, we'll launch Darkly if you've ever heard of them. They do feature flagging. They use us and they do some changes, and then they have a Slack bot where they type in, hey, I scaled up the cluster or whatever. And then they have that connected into Sleuth so that they can get all the metrics and track those changes in Sleuth.
This is cool. I mean, and you can not knowing anything about your company or like what your roadmap is or anything, you get a pretty good overall, okay, let's go to the application. Let's see how it's going. You can see, okay, the company's healthy. You've got good lead time. You can look at previous deploys. Oh, look, multiple deploys per day. That's pretty awesome. We can see your deploy frequency, eight deploys a day. Takes about a day to get something into production. Really low failure rate. Mostly small PRs. That's also a thing that I like. Look at that. I want to know what this one was.
The gigantic one?
Yeah.
Probably founders changing stuff. We might be started by a couple pioneer type folks.
But this is, I love this. I think this is great. And I also like this because this also shows whether you've got a really bad imbalance where one person is the only one who's allowed to touch the code base or something like that as well.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That's one that we're thinking about ripping out because when remember we were talking before about team versus individual?
Sure.
Some of these stats tools can be used by managers to drill down individuals. And we weren't really comfortable with that. We feel like really stats should be a team thing, not an individual thing. So
yeah.
I originally put this in as when I was on HipChat, we used a program called Get Satisfaction, and it would give you points based on handling support tickets, which I found really fun. It was just simple gamification. And so I thought, let's do it over here just to see kind of who's contributing the most or whatever. But then the more you think about it, the more you think, that can be really used for evil as well. In fact, it'll probably mostly be used for evil. So yeah, in the next version, we're probably going to pull that out. Even though I like it, I like just to when I have a week where I'm coding a lot to see my name go to the top. It's a vanity thing.
Yeah, vanity metrics.
But probably it's not a great idea.
But I wonder if there's a way to do it that's not individually targeted, but that still shows, okay, you've got how many people on this team and how many of them deployed. So percentage of team contributing to the deployment so that you can see hey, you've got 10 people and only one of them deploys. That's a bad metric, right?
Yeah. It's all those are really interesting things to know. The challenge with it is you think about how else it could be used. And I think for us anyways, I consider myself, if I had to pick a name, I would not say a manager. I would say I'm a developer. Maybe a little bit more on the architect pioneer type level, but definitely on the developer. And we want this tool to be something useful for developers. Whereas managers, they want a BI tool. They want to slice and dice, and they want to see
Right.
my remote people versus my local people because I'm trying to justify, getting rid of remote or, whatever the case may be. And we don't want it to be used for that. We feel like what's most important is the team's doing better, and the developers are given this as a tool to help them get better. We don't want it to be a top-down thing.
No, that totally makes sense. I get it. Well, I mean, this is slick, right? And what I love about it is that we're an hour into the show, and we spent a solid 20 minutes at the beginning of the show just talking about philosophical things. So our time to being up was basically nothing. We're tracking these insights. We're going to get further insights as we go. And we can plug this in with Sentry. I mean, maybe we should plug it in with Sentry just so that we can kind of show how to take this one step further. So let's, what is it? Getsentry.com. Sentry.io, that's what it was. And let's create a new project. So I'm going to create a project, and it is a JavaScript project, probably.
The Rolling Stones on the Get Satisfaction, I know, right? I think Get Satisfaction ended up getting bought by another company, which is a bummer because I wanted to use it for support for Sleuth, but I didn't. Just replying to, oh boy, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. I probably shouldn't even try, but the person who made the Easter egg comment.
So let's call this one Sleuth 11D project.
But yeah, the Surly Dev makes an interesting point, and that's something that we thought about. What if you could see your stats, but your manager couldn't see your stats?
Ooh, that's an interesting idea.
Then you could almost get the best of both worlds. Like if I do want to see how well I'm doing, if I'm taking too long, if I'm improving, but I don't want my manager to go use it on my quarterly, weekly performance rating. That's something we haven't done, but it's something I like that idea.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is
Nikki. Thank you, Nikki.
Something completely unacceptable, where I'm going to just use this base and drop in a script tag. Everybody buckle up, because I'm about to make bad choices.
Where's that hacker overlay thing when you need it?
Oh wait, I have to do this in something that's gonna get. This is gonna have to get transpiled, isn't it? Is there like a?
Yeah, Jacob makes a good point where they could let's do a one-on-one and sit down and look at your stats for sure. But if you're in one of those type of places, they're probably doing keylogger and whatever else things. I would say those are not good. Everything can be misused, I suppose. But you just want to make it a little harder.
Okay, so I'm going to use their CDN because I don't want to have to figure out how to transpile some things. And instead, I think I had... So I need to pull this back over. And then I need to go back here where it's going to show me my own thing. Yes. So... just in case I need it, I'm going to drop this in here. I don't think any of it changes, but let's just go ahead and grab this. Okay, so I have the name, release. I'm not going to worry about that. Integrations. New integrations, browser tracing, traces sample rate. Okay, so we're just going to leave that part there and ship it. Okay, so we're going to put Sentry in place. This should hopefully put it in place for us. So let's give it a shot. Add all, and then we're going to git commit. Let's see, feature add Sentry. Okay. Then let's push, and then I'm going to go back to Sleuth, and let's see if we can add integrations. error
You did this as a
trackers.
new Sentry account, right?
No.
Then you might want to off screen because you have to paste in your personal access token.
Need an auth token. Okay, so we're going to call this, is the description label, this is, let's do for Sleuth.
Make sure it has the scopes that we need.
Okay, so I need event read, member read. So let's just create this auth token. I think it'll let me create it before so we go settings, security and privacy, maybe. No, auth. No. Integrations. No. Okay. General.
It's under your personal. So if you go to your account, I think there's actually a link. If you go back to Sleuth, I think we create a link to, oh no, we can't do it a link because the org is in the slug, but
Sentry IO settings account API tokens. Hey, it took me right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make sure that I have the right things. Event read, member read, org read. Event read, member read, org read. Then we need project read, project releases, team read. Project read, project releases, team read. And I don't need event admin, right?
nope.
Okay, perfect.
Basically, we'll read the number of errors for a project, but then we also go into Sentry and create a release because Sentry has a feature where if it knows about your releases, it can do some smart stuff. And so Sleuth is kind of like do you ever use Segment?
Yeah, I know Segment.
So Segment, the idea with Segment is I'm going to send my analytics to one place and it sends them to all the places that I want it to go. And so you can use Sleuth for that way. So you tell Sleuth about the deployment and then Sleuth will go register the deployments in Datadog and Sentry and all the places.
Okay, so I added that token. I'm not going to pull that back up because it's visible. And then I have this, this is now enabled. So do I click this add impact button?
Make it so.
Here we go. And we're going to call this Sentry, right?
Sure.
Okay. Test connection. Average value 0. That would make sense. No errors yet.
Yep.
So I'm saving. And now if I go to this project, I think, like, can I just create some errors? I guess I would need to reload it. Let's reload it and make sure that it does. Ah, look, we're already getting errors because we don't have whatever we need from Sentry to make this thing work. So that's not going to work. Actually, it's not going to track. So let's. Oh no, there's my token. Damn it. Okay, I'll delete that later. Okay, so in here, is it tracking that thing? No, that didn't work at all. So let's go over to, where did this go? There, my docs. And then we've got the start setup. Is that what we need? That's not it. Setup. Nope. Sentry
While you're
basic.
doing that, I wanted to reply to Surly, who was saying about creating a thing to game that metric, the deploy, and by creating commits. If you were creating commits even on your day off and that automated script also did deployments, which is what the metric is actually tracking, the deployments, not the number of commits, that would be pretty bold on your part, I would say, if you had an automated script doing deployments.
Is there a general settings, auto resolve? Now that I've lost my pieces, I'm not sure how to set it back up. Instrumentation, is this right?
But I think it kind of it reinforces why it's important to track the actual deployments and not pretend that a commit is a deployment or something, because you just won't get useful stats and it'll be much easier to game.
Okay. So loading its SDK, if you must use a CDN, the most important thing to note is that Sentry.integrations. Oh, that's what I screwed up. So it's Sentry.integrations instead of. Okay, no, that's fine. We can make that work. Oh, and look what I can do. I made a mistake, so I can come in here to my deployments and I can say here, womp womp. I broke it. Okay, so now let's go fix it. And then go back to my base. We're going to fix this. Okay. Okay, we'll push that straight to main. No checks. Ship it.
Where's the Bill O'Reilly GIF when you need it?
We'll do it live. Yeah, it's. So let's get this going, and then we'll come back out here and make sure that I didn't break it worse. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, building, deploying on Netlify with a build hook, 100%. Yeah, you could do all that stuff. Okay, so let's make sure this worked. Don't you lie to me. It is a constructor. That's what it just told me. Well, now their stuff is broken, right? This is no longer my fault.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We use Sentry.
So this is probably my fault for using, like, this is where I probably should have done like a Gatsby or a Next that has an NPM setup, because this, like, everything in here is like, don't use the CDN, like, just don't. And I'm doing it anyway. So this is definitely like me doing this incorrectly. But maybe what I can do.
What you could.
I did the wrong thing is why it didn't work. Okay, so I need to get the right code. Right? Oh man. Okay. So let's just assume this would totally work if I was not doing it like the hardest possible way.
While doing it live.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So I'm making some mistakes here. That's really where we're at on this. So Sentry might have been a little ambitious for a project where we're going to do it the way that Sentry is like, definitely don't do it this way. And I'm like, nah, I'll do what I want. And lo and behold, it didn't work. So let's pull that out. So let's git commit.
Did you want to do the GraphQL thing quickly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I think we're getting close to the end of time, right?
Yes.
Okay. One of the interesting aspects of Sleuth is that all of our UI is all driven from GraphQL, and so you can query GraphQL yourself and do whatever you want. So what we originally talked about doing was
we got so far off topic. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. But we were talking about doing like a Twitch overlay where you could see your metrics on stream, which meant it would be a page that would load, and how would that page get data? It would get it from the GraphQL API.
Right. And so if we wanted to, let's just query the API a little bit. I think that'll be good. And then we can push a change and see it come in. So how do I get to this API if I want to get there?
/GraphQL. So app.sleuth.io/GraphQL.
Oh, just right. Ta-da. Okay.
Or if you have your own GraphQL client you like, but I usually just use this one.
Okay, so I'm assuming I'm logged in, and so if I do, let's look at project, and then I probably need project slug.
That's going to be the name that's inside of the URL, because I don't remember if your project name had spaces. You know, we do slugify it to take out spaces and things.
Yeah, so I called this Sleuth 11D project. And then in here, we can get the name. Let's just make sure no, that's not it. Org slug. Oh. Org slug.
Yeah, you'll need your org slug as well. I think that was learn with Jason.
Yep. There we go. Okay, so now we're getting our project. And so the name is kind of a redundant because we knew that to begin with, but let's get some other data here.
And actually, I think there's a top level field if you wanted to get the data that's fed into the charts. Like if you go click on docs on the top right, you'll see kind of a list of, and click on query, all the different fields you have.
Ooh, chart data. So that would be
chart data. There's also metric recap, I think, which if you just wanted to get the actual number itself.
Okay, yeah, let's
and
do
not
that.
get all the data points because you're not trying to chart it or something.
So metric recap, and I'm going to do the org slug, and that is going to be learn with JSON. The project slug is I should have kept this Sleuth 11D project, and then do I need other things? Environment slug, deployment slug, start date, end date. Can I just leave those blank and they'll default? No, they look required. Let's see. Are you going to yell at me? Number of deploys. Expected. Found in a file. Oh,
you might need to give it a time frame.
Environment slug. Okay, so environment slug is going to be production. And then we needed what else? We needed, oops, the start date of, oh, what's the format for the date?
It's a string, the ISO format.
Okay, so let's go 2021-06-08. And hopefully it doesn't make me do a complete ISO string.
We'll find out. It'll be a discovery process for you and me both.
Let's see if it runs. Deployment slugs.
That would be the name of the repository that you put in.
And that is metric recap. Slugs is an array. And let's see, look in here. Deployment slugs is Sleuth 11D project like this.
I'm waiting for my Twitch to catch up. Yes.
Okay. So
whatever's up in the URL, which since you did it with dashes, it should just be verbatim.
Number of deploys, 5. Let's look at some other data. Average lead time. Let's get the number of deploys per day. Failure rate %. Beautiful. I mean, this is great. Like, we can see a lot of information here very quickly. And like, if I was going to build a dashboard, I can plug this into an existing dashboard. I can build my own really quickly if we had more time, which unfortunately we don't because I screwed around. We could stand up a little thing that would actually show the deployment health right on stream, which is very cool. Like there's a lot of potential here, a lot of really cool stuff that we can do with this tool to give us a great view into our team health. And again, you know, with me spending quite a bit of the time just kind of jawing away here, we were still able to get a ton done. You know, we even without the once we get the Sentry stuff fixed, that'll give us even more insights. But this is already great. Like we've already got such a good insight into what's going on to see here. You know, here's a healthy deploy, here's an unhealthy deploy, and like that's really nice.
Yeah, that's the idea. One thing that we found that we're putting into the next version is a weekly report, because we found that many team leads want to know how was the last week, what were some problem areas, whatever. But each team is different, and that's the advantage of going straight to GraphQL. It's like if your team wanted to do every 2 weeks or wanted to do 2 weeks and you cared about these metrics and you wanted to see, you know, however you want to slice and dice it, because you're a developer, you can go straight to the GraphQL and get the raw data that's already been calculated. Like, for example, when we go to Sentry, what's actually happening is every 2 minutes we'll read an error rate from Sentry, and we'll throw that into a machine learning algorithm to figure out what are anomalies. So, for example, if your production application has 400 errors a minute, and that's just how you guys roll, we're not judging you, that's fine, then that's healthy for you. But if you go to 800, that's an anomaly. You want to mark that as unhealthy. So it tries to figure out that way.
Yeah, and that's good too, because like, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of times people get obsessed with the absolute numbers, but what really matters is the relative numbers. So I know when I was at IBM, for example, we had some code bases that were 25% tested. And when we looked at our code coverage, and so, somebody'd start banging the table, we got to get to 100% code coverage. And first of all, code coverage being an important metric notwithstanding, what we started looking at was, okay, well, let's look at relative addition. Like, can we get from 25 to 26% and make sure that we don't go down to 24%? And so we started tracking it that way. Is our coverage getting better or worse over time? Instead of looking at like, well, we have to get to this metric no matter what, which becomes arbitrary. And again, that gets pretty gamified pretty fast, I think.
Well, it gets gamified, and also it kind of makes you not want to even start, because you're never going to get that IBM code base to 100%, let's just be honest, without shutting the dev team down for 6 months. Like, that's just not happening. So then you say, well, why even bother if we can't hit the numbers we want? But that's not what matters. What matters is you're getting better. It doesn't matter that you obtain perfection, because, as I'm sure you would agree, there is no such thing as perfection in software.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so Don, this is really, this is great work. I love this product. I think it's going to be super helpful. I hope that, everybody watching in the chat, I hope that you're also excited about this. I can absolutely see myself plugging this in to team stuff. So I'm really excited. So if somebody wants to learn more, I'm going to drop Sleuth back in the chat here. Where else should someone go if they want to keep up? Let's send them back to your Mr. Don Brown in the chat. Again, make sure they head over to your Twitch.
Yep, that's one place. I've also, just for the hell of it with pandemic and whatever, learned about video production and all that. So we've been making some videos on YouTube, little detective type, I don't know, just different themed videos to try to explore different ways to communicate an idea. What's the
YouTube account?
YouTube/C/Sleuth TV.
Sleuth TV, no.
That's it.
Okay. There's a link.
So yeah, we try to go through Sleuth stuff, but in kind of a little bit more interesting type format.
The video production is also just gorgeous on these. I'm very jealous of your studio.
I appreciate it. You know what I mean? It's a deep, dark hole that once you go down, you just keep going down. And, yep.
All right. Well, so with that, make sure you go and check out, like, let's see, we dropped the Sleuth link. We dropped the Twitch link. Make sure you head over and, check out, again, we've had Jordan with us all day doing live captioning from White Coat Captioning. That's made possible through our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, and Hasura, all of whom are kicking in to make the show more accessible to more people. Means a lot to me. I hope it means a lot to you. That's always available right here on the homepage. While you're checking out the site, you can head over to the schedule and see what is coming up. We've got some really good stuff coming. We're going to do better experiences with screen readers with Ben Myers, Semantics Dev, who just rated today. We're also going to have Sarah Diane on to talk about JavaScript autocomplete with an Algolia plugin. Brian Douglas is coming back. We're going to do some GitHub actions. Abel Mingitsu is going to teach us about Flutter Flow, which I don't know anything about Flutter. I know very little about Firebase. And Flutter Flow apparently makes both of those things into a visual builder, which is really exciting. We're going to learn about Blitz.js. We're going to learn about Rust. We're going to learn about Strappy. So many good things are coming. Please, please, please go and mark your calendar. You can click this little button here. It'll add it to your Google Calendar so that you see them coming up. It doesn't add notifications or anything. It just lets you know that they're happening. So make sure you go and check that out. Don, thank you so much for taking some time to hang out with us today. This was an absolute blast.
It's been so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate you taking the time. We will, I imagine we'll find fun things to work on in the future. Chat, as always, thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure you stay tuned. We're going to go find somebody to raid. We will see you next time.